jurisdiction. And so I think this somehow weakens the argument that VAT collection mechanisms can be applied in the context of income taxation for enforcement purposes. The second general comment is related to citation. We know academic writing requires assertions and statements to be substantiated with reliable and authoritative sources. So, for example, the claim that the demand for extraterritorial taxation is not new, but has existed since the early stage of human beings' history. The beginning of the second paragraph on page 1. And this is a very interesting claim. It is interesting, it is intriguing, but unfortunately, it is not supported. And readers will want to know what period, which societies, and in what form such a taxation occurred. And similarly, the statement that it is the digital economy and that causes the issue to become much more common. And the statement, I think, is probably on page 2. Yeah, page 2. And this statement also lacks references. Tax compliance, especially non-resident tax compliance, has always been a challenge in the tax area. The paper should explain clearly why digitalization intensifies this challenge. So, for example, probably you can mention the scale of remote transactions, platform-based services, and the intangibles. And the rise of these issues may pose further challenges to tax enforcement and the compliance by non-residents. You could mention this issue, but you haven't really mentioned, referred to these potential factors in the paper. So I think statements and also assertions need to be supported by relevant literature. And finally, citation style. The citation style in your paper should be standardized. The paper currently somehow, I think, mixes different citation styles. Avoid just adopting a single style, such as the Oxford House style, which is normally called Oscolo, or the Blue Book used by many law journals in the US. And you just adopt one single citation style and use this style consistently throughout the paper. This would improve professionalism and the readability of your paper. So I think I will just stop here. All these comments are just very general, but I think they can be constructive and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Xu.
Yeah. Do you want to respond or react, Botao?
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, thank you, Professor Xu. I think the suggestions are very helpful for me. And I think I want to have some reactive comments on it. Is that, in fact, the original version of my paper is in Chinese. So the paper submitted to the commission was completed maybe during a very short time. So I should admit that the quality of it is not so satisfactory for you. So I'm sorry for that, but I think it's not the excuse. It should not be excuse. I need to focus more on the paper writing. And for your comments about terminology, in fact, in Chinese version, I will, at the beginning of my thesis, to carefully to clarify what's the difference between extraterritorial taxation and the taxation of non-residents. Yeah, I think it will be difficult. It will be difficult because for me, I think it's a little bit different. At the beginning, I just use the word, yeah.
Yeah, Just very quickly, sorry to interrupt. Just very quickly, why did you want to use the term territorial, extraterritorial taxation in the first place? Why? Yeah, because as I said, this term is not commonly used in the tax literature. It can already at the beginning, it can create confusion to the readers. And the first thing they wanted to know is what do you mean? What does the term mean in your paper? And why did you want to use this term? Right.
Yeah, thank you. So in fact, the purpose of my thesis is that to discuss about the administration of taxation without fiscal princess. So that is the only focus point. So it is not relevant to the resident is a citizen or the resident or
No,
non-resident.
yeah, this is just basically about imposing taxation on non-residents. Non-residents usually don't have any physical presence in the source country. So why not just simply reproduce the common understanding?
Yeah, but personally, I think, of course, for non-residents, usually they don't have, but for some residents, they can also be abroad and have no fiscal residence, or fiscal presence within the taxing jurisdiction. I can give you an example. For example, there's a citizenship tax as a citizen of the U.S. You are the resident of the USA, but you maybe just live in Italy or in Australia, but you still have to pay for your income.
Yeah, but I think these two issues should be separated. I completely understand the citizenship taxation, especially in the case of the US. And in Australia, although Australia doesn't apply citizenship-based taxation, it does apply worldwide taxation on residents. So when residents are living overseas, the government, the ATO, the tax authority, does have enforcement measures. The enforcement measures will be different from the enforcement measures in the case of taxation of non-residents. So I think this, if you want to talk about both issues, probably you need to separate them into two chapters rather than just mix these two things in one chapter. In my view, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. And in fact, as I said, the original version of my thesis is only on digital service tax. So at that time, I didn't think about any other kind of taxes. While later, I just want to enlarge the topic of my thesis. So it will just cover any kinds of taxes. So it's hard for me to separate the income or VAT into a different chapter or for non-residents or citizenship. So I just put it in the package. In fact, I admit that, put it in a package and only from the perspective of administration. So that's the reason why I will use a maybe strange word to call it and to just like a cap to cover all the issues I want to discuss. Yeah, and in fact, you have also mentioned that in my paper, I mentioned about the methods to collect tax in VAT or income tax, especially the reverse charge mechanism. At that part, my purpose, my goal is to say that the current methods to collect tax is not enough. That's the only reason why I just mentioned this. So I didn't mean
It is
that.
not enough, even in the context of the VAT. Again, my apologies for interrupting your discussion. That's why later on, quite a number of jurisdictions introduce another mechanism that is the foreign vendor registration mechanism to effectively collect the taxes in the case of cross-border B2C transactions. Because a reverse charge will not be very effective in that context. Yeah, even within the VAT itself, reverse charge is not enough, right?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I agree with your opinion. And for me, I want to use two chapters to make a comparison. to show that the current institutions are not enough. So also like RCM or voluntary compliance, they work, while we also need some other approaches to promote the implementation of tax law, especially in, I call it ET issue, under the ET issue. So that's the reason. And I'm not going to argue that RCM is suitable for income tax or voluntary compliance is okay for all the situations. So I think that is not the core points I want to argue in this paper. While my standing point is mainly about the private law perspective. And as I really agree with you that I need to put more stress on why we need to introduce private law perspective and what it is. As you said, it's very broad. Yeah, I think it's really difficult for me. So finally, I just choose a very small point, that is the legal relationship theory. So I can use the framework like rights, obligations, liability to introduce what I want to discuss. So I don't need to say that private law maybe includes many provisions or spurious like honesty or business law, something like that. So maybe it's something like will be just at random. I think not a rational discussion. But I think maybe later I need to focus more on this point and to see clearly why I need to put it in my thesis. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comment or suggestion from the room? If not, I have a very few. And obviously, it is for the sake of your consideration. You don't need to necessarily answer to one of them. Very few points. First, as I said, I found your topic very, very interesting because this has been one of my classical subjects during my academic career. My first research work was on territoriality and income taxes, and from there it followed all my career. I want to point out very basic things. One, I think that I agree with you that you try to connect, or at least that was my understanding of the paper and the presentation, what we call in civil law tax theory, and I will then briefly explain what this theory that was, why it was developed. Consider what we say conceptual or static approach versus an implementation or dynamic approach. On the one hand, there is how do we define laws, tax laws, in order to make sure that those laws can be properly implemented. And this is how the connecting factor theory was developed. And it was developed classically by Italian tax literature in the 50s, and then it was taken into consideration in the Spanish tax literature. And now I would say, apart from some of my writings, I would suggest, despite the fact that you may have difficulties in reading Italian, that you should read some of the Franzoni's, Professor Franzoni books and articles in that respect, because it explains or it tries to justify from a theoretical point of view why states can extend its arm and give relevance to something that happens outside the territory. And this I also made very Professor Schul also made a very remarkable point, which is why do you mention extraterritoriality in the first place? Probably you would need to understand what territoriality means and what the implications of the territory for the development of taxing powers of a certain state. And once you have settled the rules of the game, then you can obviously develop in which situations you can consider that this classical theory of territoriality somehow does not allow us to explain why in some situations there is still a risk of not properly establishing taxes for the ones that should pay those taxes, or even if we have implemented properly the taxes, it is not possible to properly implement or make enforcement effective. So I think that if you follow this type of development of your understanding, you can justify that you are talking about extraterritoriality by, first of all, supplying what are the implications of territoriality on the exercise of taxing power. I think that this is one of the lines, so distinguishing one on the other, and I certainly see your point of connecting what I say, the definition side. So how do you develop connecting factors to properly understand we need to collect this tax, whatever it is, whether it's an income tax, is a VAT, or is any other type of tax, is a DST of uncertain legal nature whatsoever, we need to have this tax. But even this is not enough. You need to develop in a way, you need to define in a way that at the end, the availability mechanisms to enforce can be used. And obviously, and that going to the second part, which is the implementation side, it is important that you already take into account the recent developments. So what we have now in place, it is not the legal framework that we had 15 years ago. And why? Because now cooperation between tax administrations and tax judge is a reality. And with that in place, that means that you probably need to not overestimate what is extraterritorial. Because even if it is extraterritorial from the first point of view, at the second place, you still have many legal possibilities in place to tackle, to collect, and to get the tax. And having said that, I found very interesting your suggestion of looking at financial entities and online platforms in order to collaborate as cooperators for the collection. So you call agencies for collection. I would suggest, obviously you have already said it for sure, but you had a look to the so-called Rubik agreements that were presented by Switzerland in order to prevent the development of the automatic exchange of information. What they suggested is, don't worry, we will not provide information, we will provide even better. We will collect the money and send back directly to you. You don't need to do anything. We do everything for you. Obviously, that was not properly accepted, I think, for sure, except for Germany that said, oh, I mean, at least we have the money. But having said that this was not properly developed and accepted at the international level, we went for automatic exchange information. Still, we have some possibilities remaining there to properly observe whether tax administrations can act as tax agencies of other tax administrations. Why? Because we know that information is very important. And to control information is very important. To control data is very important. But at the end, the tax administrations are not the intelligence administration of a government, are the collecting money agencies of a government. What the tax agency wants, it's money. And if other tax agencies can act as an agency of the others, it's for the good. So it is not only that assistance collection can be put into place in tax treaty, which is true. It is also there are other alternatives that could be further explored, which is automatic collection between tax authorities. And for that, it is in Spanish because it was written by a tax inspector of Mexico under my supervision some years ago. That is, it goes about how we can develop the cooperation in collection of tax debts worldwide, and it goes in that direction. And I think that this is enough because I'm consuming the time. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for your suggestions. It's really helpful for me.
Right. Any other comments? No? Not from the room? Okay, perfect. So if that is so, we are still 6 minutes before finally. This is my time. I don't know as well time there. Yeah, so we still have 6 minutes, but since we have already in the room both the next candidate to present her paper and the other discussion, we can simply make an applause to your presentation and thank you, Professor Xu, for your valuable comments, and go to the next presentation. Thank you. So we go for the next one.